Call the meeting to order. Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics, 42nd Parliament First Session, meeting number 81. And pursuant to Standing Order 108-3H5, briefing with Equifax Canada, we have John Russo. And I really want you to pronounce your name before I try. So how do you pronounce your first name?
Antonietta Di Napoli.
Napoli, very nice name. Just before we start, I just wanted to preface as chair, one of my first roles as chair was to visit the Equifax hearings in the United States, where we heard about 145.5 million Americans having their security breached. And at the time, there was quotes as high as 100,000 Canadians' data that had been breached. Recently, your company has released that it's more closer to 19,000 Canadians whose information was breached. It is concern to Canadians, as it was to Americans, that the breach had occurred to 19,000 Canadians. And I think by the end of this committee, we'd sure like to know that Equifax has fixed the software program problem that was present in the U.S. And the measures that you would see so that it would never happen again. And I just would like to open with that. Go ahead, Mr. Russo.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And members of Parliament. On behalf of Equifax Canada, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to join your committee today. I'm here to provide you with current information on the recent cybersecurity incident and to answer your questions as best I can. My name is John Russo. I am the Chief Privacy Officer and Corporate Secretary at Equifax Canada. I have proudly worked at this Canadian corporation for the past 10 years. I am based in Toronto, where I lived my entire life. I take great pride in the services Equifax Canada offers Canadians from coast to coast to coast, as well as the work that we have undertaken with government across the country to help strengthen privacy laws for individual Canadians. I'm joined by my colleague, Antonietta Di Napoli, Director of Global Operations at Equifax Canada. While her involvement with the breach activity was limited, she has extensive experience in consumer-facing roles and will be able to provide excellent insight into our consumer practices and procedures. Today, I plan to address 3 topics. First, what happened when our parent company, Equifax US, was hacked by criminals and sensitive consumer information was stolen from its servers. Second, I will outline the remediation steps that Equifax Canada has taken to assist impacted Canadians. And lastly, I will discuss what Equifax Canada is doing today to help ensure this does not happen again, as well as outline what we are doing to empower consumers with greater control over their personal credit information. But before I cover any of these 3 topics, first and foremost, I want to offer my sincere apology. On behalf of Equifax Canada and the entire Equifax organization, I apologize to all Canadians whose personal information was compromised. Being a trusted steward of information has long been one of Equifax's core principles. So we were devastated when this happened. I can assure you that in the months and years leading up to this incident, Equifax US did not take data protection lightly. In fact, it has invested aggressively, particularly over the past 5 years, in security and network resilience. Nevertheless, the cyber attack and breach occurred, and information was stolen by criminals. But we accept full responsibility and are accountable for both the incident and the impact it has had on all Canadians. First and foremost, question on your mind, what happened? We now know that criminals executed a major cyber attack on our parent company, Equifax US. In addition to accessing information on millions of Americans, they were able to able to access information on approximately 19,000 Canadians. The information accessed included data such as names, addresses, dates of birth, social insurance, and credit card numbers. For your reference, I will provide a brief overview of what happened through a chronology of events. On Friday, July 29th, our parent company's security department in the United States observed suspicious network traffic associated with a U.S. consumer-facing website. In response, the Equifax U.S. Security Department blocked the suspicious traffic that was identified. The department continued to monitor network traffic and observed additional suspicious activity on Saturday, July 30th. In response, they took the web application completely offline that day. The criminal hack was over, but the work to determine the nature, scope, and more importantly, the impact of it was just beginning. It was not known at that time that personal information had been stolen. On August 2nd, Equifax US engaged an independent cybersecurity firm to investigate the suspicious activity and contacted the FBI. Over the next several weeks, Equifax US and the cybersecurity firm worked around the clock seeking to identify what had happened. On September 7th, Equifax US issued a news release announcing the cybersecurity incident and referencing that it had identified unauthorized access to limited personal information for certain Canadian consumers. At that time, there were no additional details on the number of impacted Canadians or the specific data that was compromised. How we communicated with Canadians. As Chief Privacy Officer of Equifax Canada, I first found out about the cybersecurity incident and its potential Canadian impact moments before the news release on September 7th. I immediately took steps to notify both federal and provincial regulators, and by September 8th, I had communicated with the appropriate privacy commissioners, including the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada and consumer reporting regulators across the country. Equifax Canada also retained Ms. Chantal Bernier, former Interim Privacy Commissioner of Canada, now counsel in the Global Privacy and Cybersecurity Group at Dentons. We wanted to meet the highest level of compliance in breach response and transparency with Canadians and regulators alike. While the independent cybersecurity firm worked to complete its investigation and provide Equifax Canada with details of impacted Canadians, we started to implement our plan to notify and assist all impacted Canadians. We also updated our Canadian consumer website, equifax.ca, to make it clear to all Canadians where they could go for answers. Additionally, we hired more personnel to staff our Canadian call center, increased our call center hours, and established a dedicated breach email address. Then on September 19th, Equifax Canada issued a news release to share preliminary details we had received about the nature of the impact to Canadians, as well as what the investigation had uncovered to date. On October 2nd, Equifax US issued a news release with updates, including the fact that approximately 8,000 Canadian consumers were impacted by the breach, as well as an additional undetermined number of Canadians whose credit cards were compromised. Later that week, Equifax Canada received the data file containing information on the 8,000 individuals from Equifax US, and we reviewed it in order to construct a breach notification mailing list. We started to mail consumer notification letters in both official languages to impacted Canadians on October 13th. The notification letters informed consumers to three key facts. First, that their data had been compromised. Second, which specific personal information elements were compromised. And thirdly, it outlined the details on how to activate their free 12-month subscription to Equifax Canada credit monitoring and identity theft protection. On November 10th, Equifax determined that the number of Canadians with compromised credit cards, in addition to other personal information, was approximately 11,000, bringing the total number of impacted consumers in Canada to approximately 19,000. The additional 11,000 consumers have been notified by mail. Throughout this process, we continued to keep our regulators apprised and updated our Canadian consumer website regularly to include new information. What are we doing to protect impacted Canadians? Like our parent company in the US, Equifax Canada is extending a full range of protection to impacted Canadians, free of charge for 12 months. This protection includes daily credit monitoring with alerts, informing consumers to key changes to their Equifax credit report. Second, we're offering daily access to their Equifax credit report and score. Third, internet scanning with alerts. So if we find their SIN or credit card numbers being used on suspicious websites, we can also alert consumers. And fourth, up to $50,000 of identity theft insurance to assist affected consumers with out-of-pocket expenses. Impacted consumers received an activation code in their notification letters, which they can use to activate the services online. Alternatively, they can call into our Canadian call center to receive personal one-on-one assistance. What we're doing to help ensure this doesn't happen again. As I mentioned earlier, as soon as the intrusion was discovered, our parent company, Equifax US, started a forensic investigation regarding the attacker activity. That investigation is now complete, and we understand what occurred and the extent of the intrusion. Equifax US took steps to fix vulnerabilities and has undertaken multiple other short and long-term initiatives to protect consumer data that has been entrusted to it. It has undertaken a revisit of its entire IT and data security practice. It is further hardening networks, changing procedures to require confirmation when software patches are applied, rolling out new vulnerability detection tools, and strengthening accountability mechanisms. It has also engaged industry experts PwC and Mandiant to assist with the global security program, including strategic remediation and transformation initiatives that will help to identify and implement solutions to strengthen our long-term data protection and cybersecurity defenses. Finally, we have committed to working proactively with the entire industry to develop solutions to the growing cybersecurity and data protection challenges that we all face. We see this breach as a turning point, not just for Equifax, but for everyone interested in protecting personal information. You may have heard Equifax USA's interim CEO share plans to launch a new consumer service that will enable consumers to lock and unlock their credit file at will, free of charge, and for life through a mobile interface. That product is scheduled to launch in the US in January. And we are working to bring similar functionality to Canadians as soon as possible in the new year to ensure that Canadian consumers will have the same control over their credit information as do their American counterparts. In closing, I again would like to express my sincere apologies to all Canadians on behalf of the entire Equifax Canada team. While we have taken steps to protect impacted Canadians, we understand that Canadians across the country were upset by the news that Equifax US suffered a cybersecurity breach, which in turn impacted Canadians' personal information. Many Canadians, whether they were personally affected or not, expressed their concerns and fears to me personally, to my organization, to the media, and to elected officials. I share their concerns, as does my organization. And we at Equifax Canada are truly committed to doing everything in our power to win back their confidence and trust. Thank you. Ms. DiNapoli and I welcome any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. And just for clarity, for the committee's sake, questions, we can go all the way up until approximately 5:15. We have a motion that's going to be brought before committee at the end, and then we have some committee business as well. We can eat into that if we have questions that are still forthcoming, but that's the agenda that I would pursue if we can do that. So first off, 7 minutes, Mr. Erskine-Smith.
Thanks very much. At the outset, I would just say Equifax and other agencies similar to Equifax are effectively turning a private profit through providing a public good. And it's shocking the sheer number of Canadians and Americans that have been had their data compromised. And so just a clarification question at the outset. You say 19,000 Canadians. Is that only Canadians living in the United States?
No, that's Canadians resident in Canada.
Okay, and do you have numbers for Canadians living in the United States?
I don't have those numbers at this time.
Shouldn't you have those numbers?
I'd be happy to provide them to you in writing.
It's interesting, just in preparation for today, one would think you would have provided those numbers, but it would be great for you to provide those numbers in writing. You provided a timeline for us, but as you well know, and I know because I attended the Equifax hearing before Congress, the timeline is extraordinarily incomplete. So you don't mention at all what occurred in March, and perhaps you could tell this committee and the Canadian public, explain that the Department of Homeland Security did provide a warning in March and provide some information about the steps that Equifax US took to respond to that warning and whether you think those steps were sufficient.
Sure. The timeline in the U.S. Began on March 9th. Equifax disseminated the U.S. CERT notification you mentioned internally by email, requesting that applicable personnel responsible for an Apache Struts installation upgrade their software. Consistent with our patching policy, the Equifax Security Department required that patching occur within a 48-hour period of time.
What was the follow-up with DHS? So DHS warns you in March, on March 9th or March 8th, and I understand that there was an internal request that the software be upgraded, that the patch be run, and the Security Department ran scans that did not find the same vulnerability that DHS found. So what was the follow-up with DHS?
On March 15th, our Security Department also ran scans, as you mentioned, that should have identified the systems that were vulnerable to the Apache Struts.
Yeah, so subsequent to that, what was the follow-up with DHS? Because it seems to me, you know, a security agency, perhaps one of the most important security agencies, says to Equifax, you have a vulnerability that could affect millions of Americans, and your security officials run a program and don't find anything. Is there any communication after that with DHS to say, we ran this and there are no problems? What did you find that we didn't find?
Yeah, I'm in my capacity as Chief Privacy Officer of Canada, so I wouldn't be privy to those discussions or any discussions that were had in that relation to those discussions.
Perhaps you could request that information and follow up in writing to this committee as to what was any follow-up communication with DHS from Equifax's point of view. I mean, it occurs to me if DHS came to my company and said that you have a massive data vulnerability and I ran my own search and didn't find anything, I would certainly want to be communicating with DHS to let them know I didn't find anything and to ensure that they have followed up on that. So May 13th isn't in your notes as well, but May 13th, as I understand it, is when the hackers first accessed the information. And so it was between May 13th and the end of July that the hackers had access to the Equifax system. Is that right?
Correct, between May 13th and July 30th.
And we just finished a study on protecting Canadians' personal information, or we're in the midst of finishing and making recommendations. And a number of witnesses came before us and testified to the importance of encryption. It is astounding to me that millions of over 145,000 or 145 million Americans and then 19,000 Canadians had their information compromised, and it was that easy to go into a system and the information wasn't encrypted. Perhaps you could explain why there weren't sufficient encryption practices.
The standards we had in place in the U.S. were best-in-class standards in terms of they were recognized industry practice. It wasn't like the industry practice was not followed. In this case, as a result of human error and IT error, the vulnerability occurred and the hackers got in.
Perhaps I expect you don't have an answer today, but perhaps you could follow up in writing as well. On a going forward basis to ensure that something like this never happens again, and that was the third point you made before us, and I appreciate that. You could explain to this committee what steps you are taking to strengthen your encryption practices.
Sure. In Canada, our information is encrypted and tokenized. We're PCI compliant, and we follow the security standards. But just going back in terms of the vulnerabilities that occurred, we're having closed loop confirmation. So that's in basic terms that we're not only issuing the order to patch, but now we're also receiving confirmation. So closing that loop that it has been patched.
Right. Okay, so it's great to see that you've got some measures, including providing for the next 12 months up to $50,000 in insurance for identity theft. There's no guarantee that identity theft happens over that period of 12 months, and Equifax has quite clearly been negligent in this case with people's data. And so I wonder, are you committed to ensuring that all Canadians are made whole as a result of any identity theft that is a consequence of Equifax's negligence?
So for the impacted 19,000 or so, we're offering Premier, which is a product, our Premier Credit Monitoring, which is a product that's been used in other breaches, major breaches in Canada, Home Depot being one of them. And that's offered free 12 months for all consumers impacted. For other consumers who are worried or afraid, they can put an alert on their file, come to Equifax. We're offering it free of charge.
12 months.
For 6 years.
For 6 years, okay. And so that $50,000, up to $50,000 insurance is available for 6 years?
That's for people subscribing to the credit monitoring product, which we're offering to the impacted Canadians. All other Canadians can
No, that's why I'm talking about the impacted Canadians, those who are susceptible to damages as a result of Equifax's negligence. I want to make sure that those Canadians are made whole without having to start a class action or starting individual small claim suits. That's what I want to make sure. And so I hope today you are able to confirm to this committee that Equifax is guaranteeing that those Canadians will be made whole.
Yes, for the 19,000 impacted by this incident, they are made whole in terms of the Premier product that we're offering them that offers them up to $50,000 in identity theft insurance.
And that's over a 12-month or a 6-year period?
12-month period.
So what happens after that 12 months? How are they made whole if identity theft happens after that 12 months?
So in terms of the products they're offering, they can continue their subscription to credit monitoring after that.
To pay for it?
It's a paid service here in Canada.
So it sounds like you're not actually guaranteeing that they'll be made whole if identity theft happens after 12 months.
The product offers 12 months of credit monitoring, and it offers other indicators like lost wallet. If there's information from your wallet that's stolen or lost, we'll monitor that. We'll also give them alerts. Anytime anybody accesses their credit file, they'll be alerted to that fact within that 12-month period. So the 12-month clock starts ticking when they subscribe to the product. So it's not as of the date of the breach or their letter, it's when they subscribe to the product.
I'm out of time.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Erskine-Smith. Next up for 7 minutes, Mr. Kent.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you both for attending today. When we attended the congressional hearings in Washington, there was significant comment and questions, statements that, in fact, your company, the sector is seriously under-regulated. In your opening remarks, you mentioned that Equifax Canada continued to keep your regulators informed. I'm just wondering, who are your regulators? Who are you responsible to?
Sure. The regulators here in Canada are twofold. We have privacy regulators, like the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, and provincial commissioners like in BC and Alberta and Quebec, as well as consumer reporting regulators. We're licensed under the Consumer Reporting Acts in the various provinces that have consumer reporting legislation, Mr. Kent. So we have two sets of regulators.
Do you understand from the discussion, certainly in the United States and as it's beginning now in Canada, that there may well be a public mood to create more specific and stringent regulations with regards of private information?
Yes, and that's why we mentioned in my opening statements, we're proactively taking steps, like in the U.S., to reveal this unlock, lock, and unlock feature, giving consumers more access to their credit information and more access to their personal information, being able to control it more than they ever have. And that's a free service offered to all Canadians.
Okay. And do I understand correctly that Equifax Canada uses the same Apache Strut program and would be required to have applied the same patch?
There's various patches, but the the global security would cover all of those for the various 24 countries we operate in.
So we heard in Washington that the original breach was recognized by national security agencies who informed Equifax US. Did you get the same warning back in March of the year? In Canada, yes.
By Equifax Canada?
Yes. Was the alert given to Equifax in the United States from the national security agencies immediately passed on to Equifax Canada?
I can get back to you on that answer, Mr. Kent. I wouldn't have that information.
I mean, that's where most of the questions exist now, is this huge, inexplicable period where there was knowledge in the company that a breach had occurred. Some sorts of remedial actions seem to have been taken that were inadequate, and then the download of these millions of people.
Just to follow up your question, and
Sure.
It was only on July 29th that we noticed suspicious activity. So in the March, April, May timeline, there was no evidence to Equifax that a breach had occurred. There was suspicious activity in July 29th, and July 30th we shut down the U.S. Portal.
But there was knowledge and the warning from the national security agencies, and I don't recall specifically which ones, were that there had been penetration of the system. I'm just wondering, the questions in Washington and our questions here today are very similar. Why the big delay in the realization that the system had been penetrated and was vulnerable to a breach which eventually logically occurred?
Yes, the warnings were to require that the patching occur, and it didn't. And for that, we're feeling the repercussions worldwide.
Is there any consideration of a firewall between the Canadian portion of the company and the United States, given the problems that obviously developed at head office?
Well, given our global security and the nature of how we operate in 24 different countries, we want to make sure those are consistent. We don't want decentralized systems. We want to make sure that they're centralized so that we have a consistent policy across the board, because you wouldn't want one country to have a belt and another one to have belts and suspenders. And so what we're doing is to make sure those efforts, anything that's low vulnerability, now we're raising to a medium. Anything that's a medium, we're raising to a high. We want to go above and beyond the industry standard. And again, this incident was a watershed moment for us and for the industry, and we want to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Given that the company in the United States lost faith in the former CEO, could the same be said that in Canada and in other Equifax national operations, there are remaining questions about the interim leadership of the company?
I can speak for Canada in terms of when I found out and when our leadership team found out on September 7th, the evening of September 7th, we took immediate steps, proactive steps to make sure that all Canadian consumers, now that was our number one priority, Mr. Kent, that Canadian consumers were protected, that they were notified. We had to obtain that data from our U.S. parent, and that took time in terms of, there were over 11,000 files that our forensic experts were combing through, and then narrow it down later on in the investigation to 28 files that contain Canadian data. Now, the Canadian part of it only came to light late in the investigation. So about 2 days, so about September 4th or 5th, before the U.S. release that people have been impacted in the U.S., the UK and Canadian data portions were identified. all they knew that there were certain elements. We didn't know the scope. We didn't know what type of data. But once we had that information, the Canadian leadership team took over and were able to lead that charge here in this country.
Okay. Now, we were given to believe from some sources in the United States that the Canadians who were affected had a history in the U.S. Credit measuring universe. How did the Canadians get into the American universe? I mean, you said earlier that the 8,000 or the 19,000, down from 100,000 originally, are Canadians in Canada who have been exposed. So the number of Canadians in the United States either, or who have been in the United States in previous years, decades, that number might be much larger?
No, in terms of the U.S. Residents, if they had a U.S. Social Security number, then they would be treated in that 145 million. Those numbers are very small. I don't have those numbers today, but it's not a huge amount. In terms of...
As one of those exposed individuals, potentially exposed, and who couldn't get into the Equifax U.S. website, I gave up after about 2 hours. The rules, the access rules seem to keep changing, but you can see where that raises great concern.
I appreciate your frustration. In terms of the 18,000, 19,000 Canadians, those were any Canadians who had a business-to-consumer relationship with Equifax. So anybody who purchased something online, over the web, with Equifax and put in payment card details or some personal information, those were the 19,000, the majority of the 19,000 that were compromised in Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. On to Mr. Weir for 7 minutes.
Thanks very much. Mr. Kent asked you about the delay between the hacking and Equifax finding out about it. I'd like to ask you about the delay between Equifax finding out about it at the end of July and disclosing it publicly in September.
Sure. In terms of back in the timeline, on July 29th, July 30th was when our security team in the U.S. noticed suspicious activity. At that time, they didn't know there was a breach. They didn't even know that there was personal information involved. And that was on a U.S. online consumer dispute resolution portal. On August 2nd, Equifax Inc. contacted King & Spalding, retained them as outside counsel, and King & Spalding engaged Mandiant, a forensic expert, to perform that forensic investigation. As you can appreciate, with 145 million impacted U.S. citizens, plus a certain amount of limited Canadian and UK residents, there was a lot of data to comb through. And they had to go back and query everything that the criminals had. Remember, this was a criminal hack, and the FBI, again, was involved as well. So there were a lot of moving parts in terms of a lot of individuals involved, people working around the clock to get information and get the answers that both the American and Canadian public wanted. So given the complexity, the amount of files, the data was unstructured, so it wasn't like you're looking into neat files, unstructured text data that they had to comb through. And given the enormous amount of volume, it took time to work through it. And as I mentioned earlier to Mr. Kent, the Canadian part of it came to light 48 hours before the announcement on September 7th. So because the data sets were so enormous, it took time to make sure we did a complete investigation and thorough investigation so we could be able to identify each individual consumer, match them with a correct address, so we weren't mailing to an old address, notifying a previous address. It took time, and it took time for the crisis response, incident response team, given the size of the breach, to be ready to respond to those consumers' questions, fears, and concerns and frustrations.
Okay, but I mean, presumably it would have been possible to disclose that there had been a breach before combing through all of that information. Was it because of the FBI investigation you weren't able to make that announcement sooner?
It wasn't because of the FBI in terms of there was, that was one part of it, because with these breaches, you see there's also copycat attacks. So we knew that if anybody made that announcement on whatever date it was made, we had to be ready for the copycat attacks and make sure all our systems worldwide, globally, were not as vulnerable as they were in March. So that took enormous effort, involved everybody from legal, privacy, security, IT, all hands on deck. And again, given the scale and enormity of those impacted, it did take 40 days or so to do that.
Okay. Now, Mr. Erskine Smith indicated that Equifax essentially sells a public good. Would you accept that characterization, that Equifax is essentially analogous to being a utility?
We facilitate in terms of protection for consumers, in terms of fraud protection, identity theft protections. We have products in the market that have been used worldwide in terms of giving consumers some peace of mind and protection when they want in regards to their identity. We have products, again, like free products like an alert, where it could say, you can put on your credit file, please contact John Russo at this number before granting credit. So you alert everybody who's accessing your file that you want to be alerted before granting credit. So in terms of, we facilitate consumers in terms of life events, when you apply for a mortgage, new car, your house of your dreams. In terms of people come to us to be able to do that in an efficient and accurate way. Without that credit information, it'd be hard. It would slow down the whole economic system in terms of applying for credit. And as you can imagine, the banks and the financial institutions want that easily, and they want to make sure it's correct and accurate information.
But it's essentially something that people have to participate in and have to subject their information to.
You're correct. In terms of consumer consent and permissible purpose are two key elements under the Consumer Reporting Act. Without that, the institution who's trying to access an Equifax credit file could not. So you need the consumer's consent, and you have to have one of the allocated permissible purposes under legislation to do so.
Well, for sure you need consumer consent, but I mean, as you mentioned, credit is required for all sorts of life events that essentially everyone passes through. So people don't really have the choice to not participate in the credit system or not provide their information into the network.
So the information they're providing in terms of better serving the consumer so that they're getting the best rates possible, they're getting credit that allow them to do those life events and engage in transactions and commerce in Canada.
Okay. Now, in terms of the number of Canadians affected, it seemed that at least for a while that was a moving target. We talked about 100,000, 19,000. At one point in time, the number 8,000 was out there. At this point, are we pretty solid on the number of 19,000?
Yes, the investigation's complete, and the number is approximately 19,000. The reason being, the forensics were ongoing at that time, and it wasn't complete. So we put out that number as a preliminary estimate in order to make clear the magnitude of the breach in Canada was limited in comparison to the U.S. So our forensic experts advised us that it was up to 100,000 may be impacted in Canada. When we went and got the final numbers, there was always that credit card issue in terms of there were 209,000 credit card holders who were impacted, and of that there were certain Canadian components to it, and we later identified, so there was that 8,000 plus 11,000 credit card holders for the total of 19,000 Canadian residents.
Okay. And do you have a sense of who hacked Equifax?
We don't have that information at this time.
Okay. So when you say criminals hacked Equifax, do you mean that the hacking itself was the crime?
Yes. I mean, the FBI, it's a criminal investigation currently in the U.S. Because the act was a criminal act by whomever committed it.
Thank you, Mr. Weir. Next up, Mr. Picard. 7 minutes.
Sure. Allow me a few seconds for my guests. Please put their earpiece on. I'm going to ask my questions in French.
Yeah. And the language is on your buttons before you, so it should say English if you're being that translated.
C'est bon?
Okay. Just let us know if you can't, and we'll make sure it's fixed.
Mon accent sera pas le.
My accent won't be too bad. So I understand that you sell to your clients some protection services, protection against identity theft. Is that correct?
Any theft protection?
En général, est-ce que c'est un service, c'est un produit?
But in general, is this service insurance, type of insurance that Equifax usually offers its clients?
Services, we have two types of services. There's commercial and consumer services. This was a consumer service we offer to Canadians that we sell online in terms of identity theft protection, identity theft insurance, and that's called credit monitoring.
Donc, vous vendez ce service de...
So you sell this protection service for identity theft. But does this service, let's say I'm a client of yours, and it so happens that someone steals my identity via my bank or a transaction that I carried out at a store. If I were one of your clients then, I would be protected, Equifax would protect me? Or would the transaction, the fraudulent transaction where my identity was stolen, have to be linked to information that's in Equifax's database?
You don't have to be a victim to use those services. So you could buy credit monitoring today if you're a concerned Canadian and want to put those protections in place. We have the credit monitoring service. We have our free credit report.
C'est pas ma question. Ma question est la suivante.
That's not my question. My question is, if my identity is stolen, I'm subjected to identity theft because I carry out a transaction in a restaurant, in a store. If I'm an Equifax client and have paid for insurance to have my identity protected, would that service cover my losses, the losses due to this fraud, let's say at a restaurant?
The question now. No, so the identity theft insurance would cover you for out-of-pocket expenses. So if you have to hire a notary or a lawyer, or you'd lose time off work to rehabilitate your identity that had been stolen, that would be covered in the $50,000 insurance. The losses for a credit card company, if it was stolen and somebody went to the restaurant and used your card and paid for the meal, that would be up to the card carriers and the issuing banks to cover.
Avez-vous évalué le coût
Have you evaluated the financial costs of the transaction, the hacking, the illegal transaction that you've been hit with?
Our number one priority has been protecting consumers. I wouldn't have figures in terms of what that cost. What I can tell you is that the services we're offering free to consumers that have been impacted.
Mon intérêt n'est pas s'il arrive après.
Right. I'm not interested in what happens after, but rather what happens before. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I have only 7 minutes. Do you have an annual amount at Equifax set aside to cover what you estimate your risk management requires?
Reserves that companies take to help protect against that, as well as insurance or cybersecurity insurance.
Un pourcentage ou un montant?
A percentage or a set amount?
You may have heard from the U.S. testimony in terms of the percentage was about 12% of our IT budget was spent in terms of cybersecurity protection and security for the IT systems in place.
Quelles sont les mesures que vous utilisez pour
What measures have you set in to filter through your CVs and so on when you recruit new employees at IT?
In HR or security, so I could get back to you on that question in writing in terms of our HR procedures and policies, but I can tell you there are background checks that all Equifax employees go through, a thorough background check.
J'aimerais que la société fournisse les mesures.
I would like to hear from Equifax what recruitment measures and background checks are carried out when you employ and hire on new IT personnel. So this allegation that this is a criminal activity is something you're saying. It's not necessarily the FBI's opinion because you're not necessarily aware of who would have carried out this criminal activity. Has that been handled internally? Is any that looked into further internally?
continue our investigation with both the FBI and local law enforcement.
So my question, I'm going to switch into it because they don't get it. Did you got any information regarding to Inside Help and this hacking event?
I mean, like insider, like it was
Yeah.
none to our information that there was no indication that there was.
How about the supplier of the technology you use for your database?
There's nothing facts substantiating that, Mr. Picard.
What was the third party was able to do that your security department wasn't able to do?
Pardon, repeat.
What was the third party and FBI when you refer to a third party, outside third party to investigate?
Mandiant.
What was their expertise that obviously your security department wasn't able to accomplish?
Well, in regards to our external forensic Mandiant and as well as PwC, they were able to recreate the steps, the inquiries that the criminals had exploited in terms of the hack, and work with our internal security department to uncover that information to get a clear picture of what had happened. And in terms of the remediation steps, we're working with Mandiant and PwC to come up with remediation steps so this incident never happens again.
Your security department was not in a position to do the investigation itself.
They were in a position on guidance of counsel and King and Spalding to retain a independent forensic expert, outside help, to help better investigate what had transpired.
I have a question for another 30 minutes, but I guess my time is up. So I'll
5 seconds. You can do it.
Thank you.
You can talk pretty fast, but okay. Thank you, Mr. Picard. Next up, visitor to our committee, Ms. Boucher.
Bonjour, bien contente d'être.
Hello, I'm very happy to see you here. Yes, please do use your headphones. I'll be putting my questions in French. It's very interesting what you've had to say so far, and I think I'll be following in the footsteps of my other committee members. I'm very surprised, given that we all know that Equifax has quite a lot of weight when it comes to evaluating our own credit rating individually. So when there's such a breach in the system, and you say that we're up to 8,000 people, are you sure that it's 8,000 people? Because it seems that this has affected many Canadians, many Americans, but we're more interested in the Canadians. 8,000, that doesn't seem very high a number given how many clients Equifax has. So my question is, have you made sure that the people who were affected by the hacking have been informed, each and every one of them, by letter, by telephone?
It's a correction. There's 19,000 impacted Canadians, not 8,000. Our core assets, our core consumer and credit information was not impacted, was not affected. That was not hacked. The reason the number is 19,000 is that these were only individuals who had purchased a product online with a payment, their payment card processing with the U.S. So that transaction, and so our core commercial and consumer database was not affected at all. No other database outside of that U.S. consumer portal was. We worked with the Office of the Privacy Commissioner to notify everybody in writing to make sure they were all advised. We didn't want to call or email because that's susceptible to phishing scams and people calling vulnerable people, elderly and youth. So we it was best course of action to write write to each Canadian. And Tony can maybe describe some of the consumer relations aspects to your question.
So thank you very much for your question. So as Mr. Russo said, we did notify all Canadians via written mail, being the method of communication that we were suggested to use. Each impacted consumer received a letter. On the letter, there was informing them of the actual security breach, what information was impacted. there were different permutations that were possible. So some consumers may have had their name and their addresses impacted. Some other consumers may have been credit card information. So each consumer received the information that was compromised to them, notified in that letter. Along with that was the protection that we were offering them for 12 months, as we specified, and the how to activate that service, along with how to communicate with Equifax should they have any additional questions.
On sait, parce que tantôt...
We know earlier you responded to my colleague here across the way, Mr. Smith, that the compensation that you foresee offering would last for a year. That doesn't seem very much, given that this could be a criminal activity and that criminals now have the information. If they wait a year before they carry out similar frauds or keep the information that they have so far, will you be able to compensate the Canadians affected by the fraud? Because we don't really know. It seems that someone has got this information. I mean, we know that. And a year from now, if something else happens, given that they still have the information, a criminal doesn't necessarily think this through the way we do. So, have you thought of something down the road that will help Canadians that may still be affected by fraud?
Thank you for that. And that's the reason why we're following our U.S. counterpart in terms of the lock and unlock feature of the credit file, which we're rolling out next year for all Canadians. So in addition to the credit monitoring, where you have alerts and triggers to notify you every time somebody's touched your file, I always say to clients and consumers, it's like a fingerprint. Anytime anybody touches your file, they leave a fingerprint. So that's the monitoring. The unlock and lock ability would give the consumer control to whom accesses their credit file. So nobody would have access if you turn off that feature and then you go for a loan at the bank, you can turn it back on. So you control your personal information as a consumer. And that's why we're proactively looking to launch that in Canada in the new year. That affords consumers protection, as well as the alert, as I mentioned, which stays on your file for 6 years, that notifies, again, any credit grantor who accesses your credit information that you've been impacted and you want them to call you at a certain number, perhaps your mobile telephone, before granting credit. So those are all steps as a consumer can take to be vigilant to look out for identity thieves.
Thank you, Madam Boucher.
Thank you.
Now, next up, Ms. Fortier.
Merci. Thank you for taking the time to appear today and answer our questions. Honestly, this is an issue, as I'm sure we can all appreciate and see in front of you, that affects every Canadian in this country. You mentioned it in your opening remarks. As many of us around this table are also keenly aware, credit scores and credit rates are very confusing and stressful to our constituents, and they rely in large part on services such as yours to get the information that they need. So for many in my writing, and especially those who many not have extra funds, this breach was very personal and very troubling. My concern lies with what happens moving forward, and I know you have mentioned in your brief and again here that this information was stolen by criminals. And so I'm wondering how it is you have or you plan on monitoring where this information ultimately ends up. And have you contracted security firms to try and reacquire or at least locate who may have stolen this information?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Fortier. In terms of monitoring the dark web, we are monitoring the dark web for any suspicious traffic to ensure that your information is not being traded online. So Canadians can be assured that we're looking out for those 19,000 to ensure that their credit card information, their birth date, SIN is not being traded online, so we can alert them to that fact. The second part of your question, in terms of just consumers generally, in terms of getting educated about Equifax, and we look forward to working with you and your constituents in your riding, be it through seminars or Equifax 101. That we'll be happy to do with any constituent riding and any MP. Simple tips like this: checking your credit file. You can do it for free in Canada. You can check your credit file every day if you want to. You can visit Tony's Consumer Relations, ask questions about your credit file and your credit information, and visit our website at Equifax.ca to get some of that background information. But we like to do those Equifax 101 tours, we call, with both regulators, consumers, consumer advocacy groups across the country, so they're informed. So consumers have that information at their fingertips and can make better decisions when they're looking to apply for credit. And Tony, works with consumers. She fields those calls, pre-breach and post-incident, so she can give you a flavor in terms of what consumers are asking for.
Thank you, John. So many of our consumers, as Mr. Russo said, are coming to us because they're, denied credit, victims of fraud, and most of our conversations with consumers are really around credit education, explaining to them how credit works in Canada, how the credit score works, how to improve your credit, what affects a credit score. And our primary role really is consumer education. As John mentioned, Canadians can access their credit file for free, unlimited times throughout the year. There are many ways that they can get it. They can visit one of our Equifax offices across the country. We have an automated telephone line that's available 24/7 to consumers. They can send their request in writing, and we'll be able to provide them a copy of their credit file. As John also mentioned, there's an alert that can be added to their credit file, and we encourage the non-impacted Canadians, if they are afraid or concerned about their credit, that they take these steps in order to protect themselves.
Thank you. And again, with respect to moving forward productively with Canadians and with your former clients, how do you plan to regain their trust? And because one of the things that has repeatedly been raised to me is the time that elapsed, and we've been talking about this, between when you discovered the data breach and when you informed your customers. And the other question that I had was, what did you do in cases where there was no valid address or phone number, or a person just doesn't check their mail? How were they informed?
Tony, do you want to take that second part of the question first?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So obviously we realized that mailing to consumers, there were going to be, or may have been, some challenges. We did do lots of scrubbing of the data, and that was one of the factors in some of the delay that caused us to do some of our mailings, ensuring that we had the proper address, the most current address. We verified the data. As you can imagine, we do have accessible some of this information to us, so we were able to cross-reference and do some of that scrubbing of the initial data. There have been some mail that has been returned to us, and we are addressing those case by case, verifying if the addresses were incorrect, to see if there was a new address with a different source, possibly contacting creditors of these consumers to see if they've got an updated address.
And in regards to your first part of your question, Ms. Fortier, in terms of regaining trust, we've met with most of our members, if not all, in terms of answering their questions. We've met with the CBA, the Canadian Bankers Association, to ensure that their members were fully informed. We've had meetings face-to-face. I've been out to many of our clients to work with them to help mitigate any loss or harm that could be caused to consumers as a result of this incident. One is too many, so we want to make sure that we have processes and procedures in place at Equifax, because security starts with me as an employee. It starts with Tony. Everybody's in security. And we pride ourselves on that here in Canada. As well, our members, they can take steps at the bank, at the credit card companies, to put flags or alerts on consumers' files to inform them that they were part of this breach.
Thank you, Ms. Fortier. Next up, Mr. Kent for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the benefit of the committee, could you describe the Canadian credit data universe besides Equifax Canada? Who are the other service companies, and what are the relative sizes and I guess comparable annual revenues?
Sure. I can't speak to our competition, TransUnion Canada's revenues, but there's some smaller credit bureaus, but the two major ones in Canada are Equifax Canada and TransUnion. In the U.S., Peter, Mr. Kent, as you're probably aware, there's three. There's Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. And in terms of the revenues, they're I don't know my competition in terms of their posted on there.
It's a pretty profitable endeavor, I would think, given credit agencies, credit providers going to the best source of complete information on any of the individuals they may be dealing with.
Equifax has been around for 118 years. We fulfill a service in the community in terms of allowing the economy, people to open up small businesses. People apply for their first college or university loan. We help facilitate that, and we're just one small part in that ecosystem.
Since word of the breach became public, has the Privacy Commissioner contacted you for explanations, for details, or did you proactively contact the Privacy Commissioner?
Yes, again, as I mentioned in my opening statements, within 24 hours we had contacted either myself or Ms. Bernier as our counsel, each of the various privacy commissioners across Canada, and the OPC has an open investigation, and we're working diligently with them to answer any and all questions that they may have. We've been very cooperative. We run our privacy department in Canada based on the 3 C's: communication, cooperation, and common sense, and we pride ourselves on that, and we do that with all our partners and all our regulators.
Can you provide us with any information of the current status of the 2 class action lawsuits? One of them, I believe, is for $550 million. I'm not sure what the claim is on the other, but you will defend these actions, I assume, vigorously in court?
Yes, we've retained counsel to defend Equifax Canada based on the claims of the class action, both here and in the United States.
And at the moment, how long would you think it will take for the 2 class action suits to run their course?
I can't even opine on terms of I don't know what the backlogs or the courts are like these days. I haven't been in private practice for 10 years now, so based on court volumes, and so I wouldn't even want to fathom a guess on how long it would take to run through the courts.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. Next up for 5 minutes, Mr. Bayless.
Thank you. I guess I would like to understand a bit more that what happened in the United States going back. The Department of Homeland Security in March advised Equifax that there was a potential weakness in the system, that Equifax should install a patch. Is that correct?
Yes, there was a notice in terms of an upgrade to the software, and the personnel responsible for that at Equifax and the team responsible for that did not put the patch. And the IT system that was supposed to run and see that the patch was in place did not catch that as well. So there was a combination of human error and IT error.
You were advised, but for whatever reasons it was decided or it didn't happen. That had that patch been put in place, would that have protected this data?
To the best of my knowledge, I wouldn't be here today before you, yes.
So I guess the concern I have, and it's been raised by a few other the members here, is that what happens on the 13th month, so of someone's data that's been stolen. So someone's stolen a credit card, it's not a big deal, we can replace a credit card, but my SIN number I can't change, my date of birth I can't change, and I probably don't want to move just because of this. So there's a few things that are hardwired that are going to be susceptible to being taken advantage of, say, on month 13th or month 14th. If that person is frauded on month 13th and it costs them $20,000 to get their identity back or fight this person that's taken it, how much money, how much will Equifax reimburse that person?
Well, the services we're offering, as I mentioned, in terms of our industry norms and have been used in other breaches, and in terms of working with the regulators, you know, the 12-month period is an acceptable standard that we've seen in the past, as we've supported many of those breach clients. Again, there's free services like monitoring your credit file, where a consumer can look at their credit file information to ensure that nobody has stolen their identity, that nobody's changed their address.
Is that the norm? 12. So this happens other places, and the norm is we protect you for 12 months, and after that, you're on your own.
From the cases in Canada and the standards in terms of 12 months is a standard that have been set. Yes.
Who sets that standard?
It's been used in terms of other organizations. The courts have opined on it. You saw in Home Depot in terms of the class there, and it's been an acceptable norm in the industry and in industry practice for many years.
Is that an accepted norm if there is no fault? Like, let's say Home Depot did everything right, and there's no fault of their own. Someone managed to break in and stake their data. Whereas in this case, it seems to be that there is blame to be put on the shoulders of Equifax, is that they were informed to do something, chose not to do it. So there is a fault there. Is that the norm, whether there's fault or no fault?
In terms of the actions, I can't opine in terms of the standard. Each organization's breach and situation is different, and you know, we're willing to work with all Canadian consumers who've been impacted, given the scale of the 19,000 who have been impacted here in this country. With our consumer relations department and our incident response team, we take each individual Canadian independently and work with them to make sure that they're confident that their information has not been compromised, that it's not being traded on the dark web.
Another different type of a question then, is there a kind of a standard set for security that should be used? Is there, like, we have standards for a number of different things, like electrical outlets, standards for, is there a standard that you have to adhere to, that companies with personal data have to adhere to?
For example, in the credit card space, there's additional safeguards for PCI compliance, and we went through that in 2015 at Equifax Canada. So in Canada, PCI remediation and enrichment process, it helped. In Canada, it encrypted our data. We tokenized our data for credit cards. And there's
that standard?
The PCI standard policy and procedures organization.
And your Equifax has adhered to that standard for credit cards.
Information. Then there's other standards that we're regulated under, for example, consumer reporting legislation, which dictates in terms of how our information, where it's stored, how it's accessed, how we update it. So there's consumer reporting legislation that dictates how we as a credit bureau in Canada operate our business.
And were those standards being met when this breach happened or not?
In Canada, yes, those standards were being met, yes.
But the breach happened in the United States, right? Were they being met? Did the Americans have equivalent standards, and were they being met?
So Equifax has standards in terms of when we transfer data, that the standards we have here have to be at par or better where that information resides. In this situation, the policies and procedures were in place, but as a result of both human error and IT error, the incident occurred, and the 19,000 Canadians were impacted.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's 5 minutes, Mr. Weir.
Thank you. So I'm struck by the fact that the credit monitoring industry does not seem to be very competitive. You mentioned 3 major companies in the United States, only 2 major companies in Canada. And I suppose it stands to reason that there's a big cost to setting up a credit monitoring network, and once that infrastructure is in place, it doesn't cost too much more to cover additional individuals or businesses. So perhaps it's a bit of a natural monopoly. And I wonder if you would accept that lack of competition as a rationale for greater regulation of credit monitoring than other sectors.
Mr. Weir, excellent question. In terms of the industry, who better to serve Canadians in terms of monitoring their information than Equifax? We have every trade, every credit card who reports to us, all our members, the banks, everybody you bank with. So that information and being able to update and alert you to the fact that somebody's put a fingerprint on your file, we're in that spot where we have that information and access to that information to help better serve a consumer. Your question is fair. There's not many more industries that would have that amount of data and able to best serve the consumer to fight fraud and to be able to alert them who's touched their information or accessed their information. So in terms of fraud prevention and awareness, we're well positioned in the industry.
Okay. No, I suppose the pitfall of having all that data agglomerated in one place is then it's potentially vulnerable to being stolen, which is what happened in this case. And I wonder if you or your parent company have any estimates of the cost of this breach, what it cost Equifax, what it might cost consumers?
In the millions for sure. I wouldn't have an estimate here, and the investigation again is complete, but the costs associated with it, as Mr. Kent mentioned, the litigation, so dealing with that, dealing with security measures we're putting in place. Again, we want to be above any best practices industry standard, above and beyond, and we're working under our new interim CEO, Paulino Barros, to ensure that security comes first in our organization.
Has Equifax set aside a certain amount of money to compensate people whose security was breached?
There's reserves taken in all areas in terms of litigation reserves for each country based on litigation happening in each of our 24 properties.
Okay, but at this point, pretty difficult to put any sort of overall number on the cost of this episode, either to the company or to its customers?
Correct, Mr. Weir. We wouldn't have those estimate or figures at this time.
Okay, and is it your sense that other credit bureaus are vulnerable to this type of security breach, or is it your sense that they've got adequate safeguards in place?
I couldn't speak to our competition and the procedures and practices they have in place. Again, I'm here as Chief Privacy Officer on behalf of Equifax Canada. So I know, working with our security department, our senior leadership team here in Canada, what we're doing, what we've done in terms of going from good to better. But I couldn't opine on TransUnion or any other credit bureau here in Canada.
Have they ever had any significant breaches? I mean, not on this scale, but on any kind of significant scale?
Again, I wouldn't be in a position to opine on what's transpired besides what I've read in the media.
Okay, and in terms of what you've read in the media, do you know about any similar instances at other companies?
In the U.S., there have been similar instances with some of our competitors over the years with incidents of data breaches and incidents regarding their their consumers and personal information.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome for your questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weir. We're going to continue on with questions from the committee. Ms. Shanahan for the next 7 minutes.
Chair. Thank you very much to the witnesses for being here today on an issue that, as somebody that just heard about it and read about it, I was deeply concerned as well to hear about this, because in my career as a former banker, we relied on Equifax, this would have been in the 80s and 90s, for information. In fact, I recall at that time that the problem that we had with Equifax was that the data was inaccurate on consumers, and we regularly had to check up ourselves. So we would receive the report on a customer, or whether commercial or individual, and we would follow up ourselves and actually do the checking. And then it came out not too long afterwards that consumers themselves were discovering that their records were inaccurate, and indeed, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that not when there was a court judgment saying that consumers had the right to see their information? Because I know as a banker I was not allowed to provide customers with their information because it was a service that was sold between Equifax and businesses, including the banks, and had nothing to do at that time. The consideration of the consumer was nowhere to be found in the buying and selling of that information. So fast forward to today, now I see that on your website that you're selling consumers their own information that you are collecting, that your business customers are paying you for, and you're selling it back to customers, the verification of that information, for $20 a month. Could you please explain the business model behind this?
Sure. First, in regards to any inaccuracies or information that's lacking on the file, we welcome questions from consumers across Canada. We welcome, and Tony can speak to our consumer call centers. We want to make sure that information is fair and accurate. That's what our legislation says. That's how we operate our business. It has to be.
In fact, it's because you're selling that information. It has to be accurate. That's your business model. It's up to you to make sure that the information is accurate, not the consumer. If there is suspicious activity on the consumer's account, you should be paying for that investigation. If the consumer wants to know what their credit score is, yes, they should have access to that immediately for free, and that's what the court judgment in Canada said. The consumers had that access. I seem to remember it being once a year, and that the consumers had to go in and do it on a paper basis, provide all their information. I know because I used to provide that education to consumers, and it was very onerous and difficult to find on the website. I will give you one kudo today. I see that it is actually accessible. You only have to go to the bottom of the consumer website page of Equifax to find that access. But restoration specialists to help you recover from ID theft, the consumer has to pay for that. You should be paying for that if somebody is able to steal their ID. $19.95 per month. So I'd like to know what costing went in to discover that was actually the cost of providing this service to customers. Cancel at any time, but sorry, no partial month refunds.
So if you're one of the 19,000 impacted, we are paying for that service. We're affording all Canadians, and we've seen, over close to 2,000 Canadians so far subscribe to that service that we've offered for free to them.
For 12 months, am I correct?
For 12 months,
It should be for life, Mr. Russo, for life.
And
consumers have their SIN numbers and their birth date for life. They are potentially at risk for life. I would leave that for you to think about. Do I still have time?
You have another 3 minutes.
Okay, well, please continue.
Turn to Mr. Napoli in terms of to outline some of the access and information we have that consumers generally can get in terms of monitoring their credit and fighting fraud. Something as simple as a free credit report.
So as I had mentioned, there are free services that we have. So Canadians do have unlimited access to their credit file throughout the year. And Mr. Russo did mention that we are looking at launching functionality where a consumer will be able to lock and unlock their files for free. So impacted consumers from this breach after the 12 months will have this possibility to do so. Therefore, mitigating any fraudulent activity or possibility of fraudulent activity on their consumer file.
Could you explain to me, sorry, I didn't catch that. Is that having to do with the locking and unlocking? I would like to learn more about that service that you're looking at providing to consumers free of charge. And so what does that mean, and how will that help people protect themselves?
Yeah, so similar to our U.S. consumer offering in terms of, you heard from our interim CEO, Paulino Barros, offering at the end of January, this service where consumers will have greater control of their information. So, for example, if I have a mobile device and I want to lock my credit file, the functionality would be that until I unlock it, a bank, a car leasing company, a landlord could not access that information. If I'm applying for credit, I can do it at my fingertips, easy, in seconds, to turn it back on so a bank can access and adjudicate me for credit, because I'm the individual who wants that credit.
Example of how that would be used, if you lose your wallet, for example, because it's not so much that you want to stop your own landlord from accessing it, assuming that you actually want to, take out that lease. It's not the people that you want to access that you want to stop from accessing. It's the people you don't want accessing that account. So how does it protect them?
So that functionality would allow you in the future to be at the bank and to be able, at your fingertips, to unlock that functionality. So at this one instance, I'm going to unlock it for the bank to adjudicate me for my car lease or my loan. At the same time, there's features in terms of that you've heard in the U.S. where they have a credit freeze where it's frozen. Well, that's not very consumer friendly in most instances, because to unfreeze it takes time and reauthentication. So what we're building is an easy to use service that consumers with an iPhone, with a device, are able to do that instantaneously within seconds to allow themselves to be protected. And then at the time when they're at the institution seeking credit, unlock it for that one transaction and then turn the switch back on to lock it. So they'll have that control at their fingertips.
It sounds like there's some potential there for protecting people. But again, I come back to the integrity of the data. You buy and sell that data. It's for you to protect that data. It's your cost to protect that data. If you need to charge somebody, charge the businesses, the financial institutions that use that data to charge themselves 24% on a credit card.
Thank you, Ms. Shanahan.
Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Kent.
Yeah, well, that's
Tough act to follow.
Yes.
Very
Given that the vulnerability of Equifax in the United States wasn't detected by the company, by those responsible for the Apache Struts patch being put into place, it was a national security agency, or an aspect of the national security agency, the United States Computer Readiness Group. And I'm just wondering whether, given the increasing threats to cybersecurity around the world, whether in fact Equifax would be more comfortable, Equifax Canada would be more comfortable if there was a similar national security agency that kept an eye on the monitoring of your networks, all business networks in Canada, to prevent exactly the sort of problems that evolved during that very significant delay between the original vulnerability being detected and the hacks and the shutting down of the system.
Excellent question, Mr. Kent. We're looking at all alternatives, how we can better do our business in terms of, again, security starts with us as employees, and I can assure you, our interim CEO is, as he said, and he said in the Senate hearings, we will fix this, and whatever options in terms of working with this committee or working with others in Parliament to better serve Canadians, we're all for it.
Okay. My last question is regarding the interim CEO. Is there any understanding of how long the term of the interim CEO is going to last, or is this because there's headhunting going on for an appropriate replacement, or would the interim CEO, do you expect, be responsible through the litigation process, which, as you've indicated earlier, could drag on for some time?
Yes, I'm not, in terms of, that's at the board level, and I'm not privy to that decision, but I can assure you I've worked with Mr. Barros for the past 10 years. He was in many capacities as international president, as president of the U.S. business. He's a man of integrity, his background in terms of as an engineer, and when he says he will fix it, he'll work his darndest to make sure it gets done.
Thank you. I could cede my time to Sylvie, or?
Okay, go ahead. She's already got another 7 following, so absolutely. So Ms. Boucher for
okay.
another 7 plus 2 minutes. Go ahead.
OK. Là, right
Yes.
now, OK.
Yes.
J'ai des questions parce que j'écoute.
I do have some questions. I've been listening to those put by my colleagues. I'm replacing a committee member today, but I'm really fascinated to see just how much Equifax's reputation is being affected by this breach of its data. And unfortunately, with all the respect I have for you for being here today, your responses, your answers aren't really shedding that much light on what concerns me. So I'm going to ask a number of questions. I've got one that's really been on my mind for a while. Given the Equifax breach in the United States, has Equifax Canada, that protects Canadians on this side of the border, brought in any type of protection, a stricter protection regime to guard against this type of fraud? That's my first question. My second question. We all know that when there's a problem like this, identity theft and fraud, the consumer's reputation is also affected. I mean, really, it's much affected. Have you foreseen any sort of compensation for this type of harm? Because if it took so long to discover this breach, and that here in Canada, you know, there was a press release in September, did you foresee balancing this off in any way if you have a Canadian consumer that really might have lost their data between the first information you had about a possible breach and the time it took you to actually get involved and do something?
Thank you very much for those two questions. I'll answer your first question in regards to what we're doing here in Canada. As I mentioned, we've retained globally PwC and Mandiant to work with all the Equifax entities. We have 24 companies across the world, and so we're working with them. In terms of the closed-loop confirmation, the closed-loop confirmation I mentioned earlier, that we not only issue the order to patch, but we also receive confirmation that it was patched. That's in place. I mentioned in my opening statements, it used to take 48 hours to put such patches in place. That number is being decreased to 24 hours and less in terms of what we're doing globally. We're also refining any existing industry best practices and procedures and standards. We want to be above industry best practices. I didn't mention, in terms of the chief security officer now reports to our interim CEO. So the corporate governance structure has changed at Equifax in terms of accountability. And we're centralizing that security rather than having a decentralized system country by country. So we're working with all those individuals. We've appointed a chief transformation officer as well to get in some better transparency from a security and IT perspective. So not only for Canada, but globally, this incident won't occur in the U.S., in Canada, in Argentina, and anywhere else we operate. In regards to your second question, consumers' reputation affected. Again, Tony's team works individually, case by case, with each individual consumer. We have call center representatives who are able to alleviate any consumers' concerns or frustrations in terms of walk them through what has transpired, if anything, with their information. Again, we have protections in place that have been used in other incidents a lot larger than ours to afford Canadians protections. Again, our number one priority is the Canadian consumer. You know, I've heard from neighbors, friends, family. You know, this affects everybody's reputation. We have 10,000 employees globally. It affects them as dearly as it does the Canadians who are impacted. You know, so at the same time, we want to make sure and ensure that the Canadians are best afforded the best protections that they have in the market based on regulatory situations in each country. There's a different regulatory situation in the U.S. than there is in Canada, and we want to make sure we apply those to each country individually to best represent those individuals.
Jean-Claude Dustin?
Do I still have time, Mr. Chair?
OK. Oh, non, pour une fois, je vais.
Oh, wonderful. So I have some time to talk. All right, that's all very well and good. But your reputation as Equifax, because, you know, consumers are often asked for their Equifax file. You know, Equifax and everything's supposed to be hunky-dory. But so, what I'm worried about is my impression that you waited for the United States Equifax operation to sort of do something before you picked up here in Canada and ran with the ball. And now, of course, you've set up some measures. But what are you going to be doing into the future to protect consumers better? And how are you going to ensure that the protection of your consumers' private data is never again made public? That's the basic issue. Very often, criminals or whoever it was who got hold of this information won't necessarily use it today or tomorrow. Of course, they might use it in 2018. So how will you at Equifax ensure that data is protected 100%?
Thank you for those questions. In regards to the data that was impacted, our core consumer and credit database, so the daily transactions that we do with banks, the information we sell to the banks was not impacted at all here in Canada. So again, the 18,000 were in regards to payment process data that resided in the U.S. where there was a transaction between a consumer and our U.S. merchant. And in terms of the timeline, just want to clarify, the Canadian portion of the records that were impacted came to light in or about September 4th or 5th. With all the experts and everybody working around the clock, the Canadian piece of it came to light late in the game, in the investigation. So when we found out, again, my timeline on the 7th, we notified all of the appropriate commissioners. We contacted our clients. We did what we could from a Canadian perspective to best serve those Canadian constituents. And at that time, we didn't even know how many there were. So we worked with our incident response team and our leadership team in Canada to make sure that we got the information, we got correct information, that we worked with our teams south of the border to ensure that we had all the tools at our fingertips. And once we had that information, we provided the consumers with the protections in place in terms of the monitoring that they could subscribe to, and in terms of affording them protections of their identity. And you heard the features of that product. And to ensure this doesn't happen again, just to summarize, we've enhanced our vulnerability scanning, our patch management processes and procedures. We've reduced the scope of sensitive data retained in our back-end databases. We've also increased restrictions and controls for accessing data housed within critical databases. We've deployed additional web application firewalls. And the list goes on in terms of working with the experts, working with internal and external experts. It wasn't like we didn't have good systems in place, but we want to be better.
Thank you, Ms. Boucher. Next up, Mr. Weir, then Mr. Erskine-Smith.
Sure. Really just one question. The Privacy Commissioner has indicated an investigation into the Equifax breach. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that investigation and how you're working with the Privacy Commissioner.
Sure. So our team is working along with our external counsel, Ms. Bernier, with the Commissioner's office. We've had regular meetings with them since September, the initial phone call within the first 24 hours that we were notified on September 7th. So we've worked with them. We worked with all the commissioners across Canada in the privacy space. The investigation's ongoing. We're, again, compiling our answers to the questions that they had and working best to answer them in a fulsome manner so that they can get answers and complete their investigation in due course. So we've been very transparent. Again, accountability and transparency are what drives our corporation, and we want to make sure that we're doing the best thing for the consumers and the best thing for all of our clients.
That's good.
Thank you, Mr. Weir. Next up, Mr. Erskine-Smith.
Thanks very much. I have a few small questions. So there's a preliminary report released in relation to the internal investigation. There's a final report that's public?
In terms of the Mandiant report?
That's right.
It's a confidential report.
I see. So even though 145 million Americans and 19,000 Canadians have their data made more public, the investigation of that internally is not going to be made public. 12-month free subscription, how many people have opted in of the 19,000 Canadians?
So far, we have about 1,700 Canadians. Tony's got an updated number as of this morning.
% of Canadians affected have opted into the program so far.
There was the initial mailing, just to level set, the initial mailing was 8,000. Of those 8,000, over 1,600 people have subscribed to that. The second mailing in regards to 11,000 had gone out within the last few days. So we're seeing an uptick in terms of people starting to subscribe to that. So it was 22%.
You've undertaken to provide this committee numbers of Canadians affected in the United States as well. Will you also provide this committee with information about the number of Canadians in the United States affected who have opted into this program as well, this additional protection?
We'll make our best efforts to.
Thanks. Are there any reports of identity theft? Has there been any identity theft reported to Equifax, either in the States or in Canada?
To the best of my knowledge, not to my knowledge, Tony can speak from consumer relations, but...
I only have information based on the Canadian consumers, and we have not had any complaints in regards to identity theft or fraudulent activity from the impacted Canadians that we identified.
So to follow up on a previous question of mine, March 8th or 9th, DHS notifies Equifax in the United States of a data vulnerability, and there's an internal audit run in some fashion by internal security officials. They find nothing. To your knowledge, you're going to get us information if there has been. There was no follow-up with DHS. Was there any follow-up from senior officials at Equifax or senior management as to their own security team to say, so you just did one sweep, didn't find anything, but DHS has said this was a problem, or was there just radio silence between March 15th and end of July?
Our former CEO, Rick Smith, was told about the suspicious activity on July 31st.
Right, but if you're in a senior management position, DHS has said to you, this is a problem, you're going to get us information as to whether you follow up with DHS, but was there any internal follow-up after that March 15th sweep, or that was sufficient to satisfy concerns of senior management?
I'm in my capacity as Canadian CPO. I wouldn't have that knowledge. I wouldn't be privy to that information. Sorry.
Okay, so it occurs to me, DHS notifies Equifax of security vulnerability. There's one sweep done, and then I should also add, I've got information here that says Equifax did not take advantage of DHS's automated indicator sharing program that would enable the exchange of cyber threat indicators between the private sector and the government. An Apache Strut patch was not adequately installed as it ought to have been. Is that fair to say? You add up all these factors. Would you characterize that as negligence on behalf of your parent company?
I would not characterize that as negligence.
Okay, well, allow me to characterize it as negligence. And yeah, that negligence, and where there are damages that might flow to Canadian consumers, ought not Equifax not Equifax to make these Canadians whole and to ensure that no Canadian experiences any damages, any loss at their own expense as a result of the negligence of Equifax?
And we're taking steps to ensure that we're monitoring the dark web, that this information is not being traded, not being compromised. We're offering the premier product to ensure Canadians have protections in place. We have the call center available to answer any questions or concerns that Canadians may have. We're taking all the best steps and practices and working in tandem with the OPC and their guidance to make sure that we're doing the best thing for each individual Canadian consumer.
Can you provide this committee with the, in writing, I expect you don't have it today, but the detailed steps Equifax is taking to monitor the dark web, simply because I'm not entirely sure what that means. So you mentioned Home Depot as an example, and in response to Mr. Bayless's questions, you said that the 12-month offer of additional services is sort of a standard in relation to these breaches, and you pointed to Home Depot. You may also be aware, though, of course, that Home Depot settled a class action suit against them in relation to that privacy breach, and so you fully expect, I would assume, to have set aside some funds for a class action suit and to make sure Canadians are made whole through that process?
We manage the litigation process with our litigation counsel.
I ask only because you had said Home Depot is a good example. Home Depot paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to Canadian consumers as a result of that data breach, and there had been no identity theft there either. And my last question, so this committee is considering recommending giving the Privacy Commissioner new powers, including the power to levy fines where companies have failed to protect privacy adequately. What do you think about that potential recommendation?
Actually, we've worked with the former Industry Canada and with Canadian Marketing Association and other associations in regards to those regs and guidance. And we've worked with the OPC in terms of better protecting consumers, giving consumers control of their information.
That ability to levy fines. So we're considering new powers for the Privacy Commissioner. The UK Commissioner, Privacy Commissioner as an example, has the ability to levy fines and has done so as an example in a case against Sony. So in this case, Equifax having not acted appropriately and adequately, I would say, in protecting Canadians' privacy, there would be the potential, presumably, if the OPC had such powers to levy fines. Would you support the OPC having such ability or such powers to levy fines?
We're open to working with government on all new guidance and all new regulations.
All right. Thanks very much.
Your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I just have a few questions of my own. As one of the members that traveled again to Washington, I just had a question. We know the Privacy Commissioner oversees the data. Once it's been breached, the Privacy Commissioner gets involved. But which Canadian equivalent oversees the data traffic? Like Homeland Security does, Department of Homeland Security does. Mr. Erskine Smith has referred to this many times. What's the Canadian equivalent? Who oversees the data and possible breaches for Equifax Canada?
From a security standpoint,
Yes.
do you mean law enforcement?
Yes.
So we've been working with RCMP and the FBI in terms of globally in regards to this incident, answering any questions they may have. Because the Canadian element, because it was the majority of the impacted individuals were Americans. In terms of the 19,000 Canadians, we've been answering any and all questions the RCMP had and other law enforcement.
And I guess it goes along with the concern, too, with what different members have said. Is this 145.5 million people and 19,000 Canadians, the data has not apparently been used yet. And I guess the concern is this big bomb that's about to go off and what they're going to use it for. Have you seen any cases, we heard about Canadians that have not been affected by this, that you've seen? Have we heard of any issues in the U.S. who have used this particular data, this 145.5? Has it been used yet, and what has it been used for?
To the best of my knowledge, I've not heard of any cases. Maybe Ms. Napoli has heard anything in regards to her conversations with U.S. operations and consumer relations. But at my office, in terms of as Chief Privacy Officer for Equifax Canada, I have not had a reported case where somebody claimed as a result of this incident, as a result of being impacted and mailed to in regards to the 19,000, that they've been impacted negatively and had their identity stolen.
Mr. Napoli?
I too, much like Mr. Russo, have not heard of any incidences where the impacted Americans or Canadians were impacted by any fraudulent activity or identity theft.
Kind of one last question. What was your revenues for Equifax Canada? What was your revenue for 2016?
I think the revenues were approximately $250 million for Equifax Canada.
Okay. It kind of goes along line with the question that has been made here. Somebody's stolen identity can be life-changing, and we know that. And I think if I asked you an estimate, what that would particularly cost any individual if their data was breached, it could, again, be life-changing. They might not be able to buy a house, they might not be able to car, for many, many years. And as a result, can have so many traumatic events happen in their lives. I guess I just would suggest that the $50,000 is a little light on providing Canadians with the reassurance that you're going to take care of any breach. As again, that Ms. Shanahan said that you're responsible for this data, and you're responsible for taking care of this data. And as a breach, I think you should be, at the very least, recovering all costs, if not extras, as a result of this particular data breach, which we all know, and Mr. Erskine-Smith has referred to, was your own fault. And you've admitted to it. You've apologized for that. So I guess as a committee, our time is done, but I would challenge you to do the right thing and make sure that Canadians are made whole again if affected by this. And again, the concern is when this is going to affect Canadians, we're not sure, but hopefully Equifax will step up to the plate. And thank you for appearing today and hearing some tough questions, Mr. Napoli and Mr. Russo. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee.
So we're just going to suspend for 5 minutes quickly, and then we have some committee business. Okay, we'll bring the meeting back to order.
We're in public.
Yeah. Councilor Honest. Okay, thank you, everybody. We have a motion before us that most of you have seen with from Mr. Erskine-Smith.
So you all have the motion before you, I expect. It's fairly straightforward. The nominee for the office of the Commissioner of Lobbying of Canada was tabled, I think, last Thursday in the House, and the idea is to bring Ms. Belanger before us and have an hour of time with us to ask questions of her and go from there.
No, agreed. I mean, we had passing contact with her in her current capacity a few weeks ago, and I think, I think it's very worthy, and I understand she may well be available.
Okay.
That's my expectation.
Just for the record, I'll ask, is she available? I believe she is.
Yes, so I've reached out to her, and she seems to be available on Wednesday, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, no, it's okay. I'm just going to move to the vote. Yep. Okay. Any further debate on the motion? All in favor? All opposed? Carried. So now we'll go into in camera. Please.
Yeah, so we'll suspend.
We'll suspend.